And welcome once again to Flashpoints. I'm Bob Orr, joined by Juan Zarate, our national security analyst. Juan, good to see you again.
Bob, great to see you.
Syria, an ongoing problem. We've had this on Flashpoints many, many times. Now we've kind of reached this new phase where there's true concern about whether either side has used chemical weapons. What do we know about that?
Well, what we suspect, based on some reports, is that there may have been the use of chemical weapons. And I use that word may intentionally because it's not yet clear what has happened. People in the opposition, the Syrian opposition, claim that the Syrian regime has used chemical weapons in an isolated context. There's some video attached to this, but it's not yet clear. For the Obama administration, for the U.S., this is a very important question. What evidence is there that there actually was the use of chemical weapons? Because all along the Obama administration, the president himself have said that that is a red line, that we would not allow the use of chemical weapons. And the use of chemical weapons raises two specters, not just the gross humanitarian problems with that and the sort of inhumanity of the regime to use that against its own people, but it also raises, again, the specter of others getting their hands on chemical weapons. Those that support the Syrian regime, like Hamas and Hezbollah, we know Hezbollah has fighters in Syria, or the opposition. And there are elements of the opposition that we don't like and are afraid of, like the al-Nusra Front, who are tied to al-Qaeda. Right. And so in some ways, this raises the nightmare scenario on two sides, because it's the nightmare scenario of a state actor with proxies potentially using chemical weapons. And on the other hand, a terrorist group getting their hands on chemical weapons. Always been the nightmare scenario for counterterrorism officials. I mean, we spend hours and hours up at night worrying about this precise problem, and in some ways it's emerging amidst the conflict in Syria.
For the White House, this is very important that they get this right, because the president has said that's an absolute red line if you use chemical weapons. It's been suggested that maybe they didn't use the kinds of weapons that are prohibited, but maybe they used some kind of chemical irritant, some kind of technical difference. Is that possible?
Maybe. I mean, it's hard to tell. The Syrians have a wide array in terms of their stockpile. They have everything from classic munitions all the way up to sarin gas and nerve agents, and so it's possible they used some mild form of something that acted like a chemical agent but really wasn't technically. But this evidentiary question is really interesting because it forces the U.S. to engage in a bit of forensics here that require being on the ground, require getting samples, require things that are very difficult to do. And I think at the end of the day, it's probably going to be inconclusive because we're not going to be able to determine with certainty what actually happened. But I think you've seen the president messaging again when he was in Israel that we would not allow chemical weapons to be used. And so I think that will continue to be a red line. The question is, can you prove it if it's alleged?
What do we know about the hold that Assad has on what's left of his government? There was a rumor a few days ago that somebody inside the government, a guard, had shot and killed Assad. Now, the rumor wasn't true. Right. But when that kind of stuff starts to percolate out there on the internet, does that mean anything? What do we know?
Well, we've seen some high-level defections. We saw a very senior general defect just a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. Those are significant events, and rumors of lack of cohesion and lack of alliance, even within the Alawite community, is important. But I think we're fooling ourselves to think and to hope for sort of magic solutions, sort of a rupturing of the regime or a rupturing of the military that has decided it's going to defend and fight to the death to see the survival of this regime. And so I think in some ways our policy in the U.S. has been not only hands-off policy, it's been one of inaction and one that has been hoping that the rebellion or some other factors will bring Assad down. The reality is he's going to fight to the death. He's got weapons. He's willing to use them, including Scud missiles, maybe even chemical weapons. So this is going to be a messy, long civil war and fight. And the U.S. has to decide whether or not it's going to get in at some point more forcefully than it has.
So there's no overt sign, no conclusive sign that he's losing his grip at all here?
I don't think so. I think the one thing that is interesting to watch is how much Damascus itself unravels. We saw the University of Damascus hit by mortar fire just the other day. So the sense of normalcy in Damascus has been eroding for months. But the more that sense of normalcy goes, the more that the regime is going to appear to be fragile. And I think that'll be important to those inside, those who've been willing to fight for Assad but may not be in the future. But I think this is going to fester for a long time, Bob, and I think we've in some ways overlearned the lessons of Iraq and constrained our ability to think creatively about what to do in Syria. And I think that's a real problem.
Another one we're going to have to watch for quite a while.
Yeah.
Juan, thanks very much.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks to you again for watching Flashpoints. I'm Bob Orr. We'll see you next time.